with the King and the Queen. That is a look of astonishment. I hope it's not outrage, but that an action shot of what's been taking place inside Windsor Castle. He's certainly always animated, isn't he, the President?
It's intriguing, isn't it? Because the President actually looks rather angry, but King Charles looks
It's a
very
caption
happy
this
and amused.
competition.
Exactly, come up with a caption for that. He's certainly, what's the word, he's sort of, he's quite energetic, isn't he? Something has motivated the President to give us that reaction. He may be just speaking off the cuff in a way that's sort of animated, but it's certainly not offending, it seems, the King and Queen to his left. But it's moments like that, I think, that will worry the Starmer government, the Prime Minister and his ministers, as they sort of wonder what this erratic and unpredictable President might do next. It's the off-the-cuff moments, I think, that will worry them most, and also what he says in the
OK,
press
interesting
conference
that's the first official image come from behind the scenes at Windsor Castle. Dominic, thank you very much. Coming up, much more pomp and ceremony. We are expecting the beating retreat ceremony on the east lawn of Windsor Castle. The Prime Minister will be in attendance at that, along with the President and the King and Queen. Stay tuned here on Sky News. It's 3 o'clock. You're watching Sky News live from Windsor, where Donald Trump is spending the first day of his second historic state visit to the UK. The King, the Queen and the Prince and Princess of Wales welcoming the US leader and his wife Melania earlier as the royal VIP treatment got underway. Well, first, the President left the US ambassador's residence in central London. Cameras all trained on the sky to catch that moment of him in flight on this cloudy and rather overcast day. Well, the King was seen waiting for the couple's arrival inside Windsor Castle. He was taking a peek out of the open door as his household prepared for the big moment. After the short trip from the capital to the castle here in Windsor, Marine One touching down, the presidential helicopter fitted with missile defence and radar jamming systems landing on the lawn in the Berkshire grounds just before 12:15 this lunchtime. President Trump walking down the steps to shake hands with the Prince and Princess of Wales. The President then walking the short distance to meet the King and Queen, with Her Majesty now attending this entire state visit after recovering from acute sinusitis. Next up, the much-anticipated carriage procession around the grounds of the Windsor estate, all kept, of course, behind that ring of steel that has been built up around the royal residence, especially for this visit. The national anthem played as the carriages drew up to the castle. To the sound of the American national anthem, President Trump once again joined the King and Queen on stage. Then, at the invitation of King Charles, President Trump was offered the opportunity to inspect the Guard of Honour. Donald Trump's links to and love of Scotland well known, the sound of bagpipes bringing the welcoming ceremony to a close. President Trump and the King then headed inside the castle ahead of a lunch together, which was held in the state dining room. The President and First Lady visiting St George's Chapel to lay a wreath on the tomb of the late Queen Elizabeth II. Later on today, it is the flypast and, of course, the state banquet tonight. Well, it's been a busy day so far, much more to come. Our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills and our international affairs editor Dominic Waghorn have been alongside me following events today. Where shall we start? Let's start with the news. Let's start with the latest news that's been coming from the bits that have been happening behind closed doors. Of course, there's a bit of a break now from the cameras. We understand that gifts have been exchanged. Rhiannon, I know you've got details of those. And of course, that first official picture coming from inside Windsor Castle, which took us by surprise as to why this one was chosen. Oh, this isn't the one. This is probably Donald Trump in less animated fashion, but I was referring to a more animated picture we saw of Donald Trump looking surprise. And these are pictures of Donald Trump looking at the royal collection in the green drawing room, Rhiannon. And this is the picture we were talking about.
Yes, so this traditionally happens with every state visit. The royal collection, they have a look through what is a huge, extensive archive that they have, and they try and pick individual pieces that they know will kind of pique the interest of the visiting dignitary. Something clearly caught his attention there, but what is really interesting is that I understand there were some specific items that he requested to see, and yeah, what do you think of this? Apparently it was things like documents to indicate George III's realisation that America was no longer under his control. So it was all about American independence. So I'm sure Dominic has a few thoughts on what that says about Trump and how he feels about the UK-US relationship.
Well, I think it's interesting. Does it bode well or ill? I don't know for Britain. On the eve of the 250th anniversary celebrations next year, is Donald Trump going to bang on effectively as to how Britain lost the colonies? Because, you know, Donald Trump likes winners, he doesn't like losers. Is he going to emphasise that point? Interestingly, he's chosen to do so, but I think more reassuringly, his present to and from his the First Lady to His Majesty was a replica of a President Eisenhower sword, a gift symbolising profound respect and a reminder of the historical partnership that was critical to winning World War II. So on the one hand, he is highlighting the rift between Britain and America under George III, the fact that George III eventually realised he couldn't hang on to the colonies, and America won that war, but he's also highlighting in his gift to the King and Queen he's using a gift to highlight a partnership in another war. So I think that will be reassuring, at least to his eyes.
We'd hope so, yeah.
The subtle messages that go with gift giving. You think it's political around families exchanging Christmas gifts. They've got nothing on a state visit. Let's talk about, Rhiannon, what we've seen unfold so far. As I put to Alistair Bruce, our royal commentator, to the untrained eye, in these kind of circumstances, everything seems to have gone according to plan.
Do you know what? I was really lucky. I was right there in the quadrangle for kind of the military display as it got underway. And in the lead up to this, no one was being coy or shy about it. They were saying this is literally the best that we can offer. It is the biggest, largest military ceremonial welcome we have seen for a state visit in living memory. So literally they are rolling out every bit of red carpet they possibly can. And you're inside kind of the grounds of Windsor Castle, and this is a place that we know the royal family love. It kind of has a more personal touch to it. And I felt like I really had a ringside seat to watch this spectacle unfold and really watch the interaction between Donald Trump and the King, which seemed incredibly relaxed. Donald Trump, Dominic kind of follows him more than I do, but he kind of had this air of calm about him that you don't necessarily see all of the time. I think it shows he has a huge amount of respect, admiration for what he was seeing in front of him in terms of that military spectacle. We know that he loves his military history, so if we're going to lay this on for anybody, you might as well do it for him, really. But there were lovely interactions between him and the King, especially quite a funny moment where Donald Trump clearly really enjoying inspecting the guard, but got to the end of the line, and the King had to say to him, watch out for that sword, as this soldier kind of lowered a sword in front of him. They know the eyes of the world are watching, and they don't want anything to go wrong. We
were saying, though, earlier, Mark Stone and I, that he looked a little bit out of his comfort zone.
Yes.
You're saying he looked calm, but he's someone who has such a commanding presence wherever he is, doesn't he? A real physical confidence, and yet in this sort of arena, he did seem slightly unsure of himself. Was that your impression where you were?
Yeah, and I think you could see that he was waiting to kind of take the guidance of the King in terms of what do I do next. So when they got out of the carriages, Donald Trump got out first, and he was sort of standing there waiting for the King to also leave the carriage to say, right, this is where you need to walk next, you need to go up to the dais. And also constantly in conversation with the King as they were doing the guard inspection. We know back in 2018 there was those unfortunate pictures of what looked like Trump walking in front of the Queen. Nobody wants anything to go wrong. No one wants to put a foot wrong when it comes to this. But yeah, I think Donald Trump really kind of taking the lead of the King.
Rhiannon, that moment you were talking about where the President nearly got the sharp end of a sword,
yes,
maybe an unscheduled haircut, and we've actually got a clip of this. Yeah, the king doesn't take his eye off the sword.
But there's not an awkwardness to it. They seem very relaxed. They're laughing. They're enjoying each other's company. And yeah, Donald Trump, when he got on the plane yesterday, he said, "We're friends." Yeah. And you could see that kind of natural familiarity between the two. Others say the king maybe doesn't know Trump that well, but certainly it's brilliant for us if Donald Trump thinks that they're friends. It kind of eases those relationships.
Dominic, is this the nice bit? Is this the enjoyment day for Donald Trump today, in terms of, you know, he can relax and soak it all up and just enjoy the occasion, because tomorrow it's probably going to get a bit more difficult and a bit more fraught?
Yeah, except he's someone who he craves the limelight. He loves to be the centre of attention. He loves press conference. He loves the kind of cut and thrust of political jousting. So he may well decide to, you know, go off the script a bit at the press conference tomorrow. He certainly won't, you know, be worried about that. I think he'll revel in that as well. But I think, yeah, the highlight for him when he goes back and when he looks back on this will be this event at Windsor Castle, because it's something that means so much to him. And, you know, he's been looking forward to this, and that's what he's focusing on. And as he left the White House yesterday, he said, primarily, this is about the pageantry. It's about the state visit. It's about the welcome I'm going to get. And he emphasises, he has a number of times, that he's very special. He's the only elected leader ever to get a second state visit. And for him, that's the key point. And also the fact that, as Rhiannon was saying, there's never been a military reception on this scale, certainly in terms of numbers of soldiers, if not sort of geographical area. So that's a superlative. You know, it's the president who loves superlatives if they're about him, and he's going to I think, cherish that as well.
Well, it's all about optics, isn't it, today? Let's have a look at some more pictures that have been released to us from inside the castle of President Trump and King Charles. These, I understand, are the latest pictures of them leaving. You know the geography of Windsor Castle, Rhiannon. Where will they be heading here?
So this was actually from earlier, because you can just about see me in the background there in my pink coat.
So that's them leaving the ceremonial part of this morning.
You did have a good seat.
It was amazing. No Secret Service in the way, no close protection officers in the way. Absolutely incredible. What they're doing at the moment, and actually from our live position earlier on, the gates behind us have been open for some of that time. They're now closed because we know that the President and First Lady are having a tour of St George's Chapel. Again, this will tick so many boxes for him. It is the resting place of Queen Elizabeth II. We know, just like President Macron did earlier in the summer, he will pay his respects there. That will be away from the cameras. But then he's going to be given a guided tour of St George's Chapel. They're laying on a special choral performance for him. And so, yeah, what I think is fascinating about this state visit is usually the visiting dignitary, they'd have lunch, they'd look at the royal collection artefacts, and then they might go off to Westminster Abbey, or they might go and meet up with the leader of the opposition. There are more political elements often with a state visit. They certainly don't hang around the royal family as much as they are this afternoon. But I think what they're wanting to do today is, ahead of the very heavy political matters tomorrow, is just make sure that he has the most fantastic time today. Feels like he is being wined, dined and hosted by the royal family in a way that other world leaders simply don't get. And therefore, if he is, he will inevitably be asked those difficult questions tomorrow about the difficult backdrop to this trip. But at least, as long as today he feels like he's been welcomed by the United Kingdom, hopefully that will kind of reinforce those positive thoughts in his head. 2019, he put together his own picture book of memories. That's what they're hoping to achieve again today.
Well, our next glimpse of the President and the King will be the beating retreat ceremony in the East Lawn of Windsor Castle. That's the next time our live cameras will be able to catch a glimpse of them. A warm welcome from the royals today for President Trump and the First Lady. Some, however, in Windsor and in central London, unhappy about the President's visit, this unprecedented second state visit. This is the scene around Windsor Castle a little earlier. You can see some of the signs there, protesters gathering. There are also protests taking place in central London this afternoon. That's where we find Ashna Huranag. Ashna, put us in the picture as to what's happening there this afternoon.
Well, it's estimated some 3,000 people are on this march. It started, we're kind of near Oxford Circus. They're making their way all the way down to Parliament Square in Westminster. There are shouts that he should not be here, words to that effect, many using profanities too, and there are plenty of people that are also here that have made their own form of art, different signs, different banners, different placards, but also some forms of satire as well. And I want to speak to Anne, who's just behind me. Anne, you're holding that toilet brush pretty high and proud. Tell me about it. Why are you here today?
I'm here to protest against Trump's visit, Trump's administration, and all the awful things he does.
And what did you feel when you saw those images earlier about that pageantry in Windsor? How do you feel about him being offered all of that?
It made me feel sick to my stomach that we have to pander to him. It's obscene. And I really wish that the King and Keir Starmer hadn't been put in that position. I really do.
And thank you. Where are you from in the country?
London.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you. Well, Anne is one of the, well, as I say, thousands of people who are here. There are also lots and lots of sort of forms of art here, Sarah Jane. I've seen somebody who's impersonating the president, lots of people with MAGA hats on, but they've replaced some of the wording to say, to sort of talk about fascism, racism, sexism. We've also seen lots of pictures, that image, that striking image of Donald Trump with the sexual predator Jeffrey Epstein. That image that was beamed across the Long Walk is also on many of the placards here today. Look, there's no kind of secret. This is being kept well out of what you are seeing in Windsor. Geographically, this has deliberately been marked 25 miles away from all those celebrations where you are, because they quite frankly don't want to upset the president. But it's clear from people here today that they believe it's because of them that all of that has been shut behind closed doors. But they are adamant they're going to see these pictures, just as those pictures from inside Windsor are being beamed across the world. So are these pictures, and people here are counting on the fact that he will see them and feel their strength of feeling.
I also saw behind you, Ashna, some signs with some swearing on. So for those who also saw it like me, I do want to apologise. Ashna Hurinag, thank you. Those protests happening in central London. There's protests here in Windsor as well. Talking of protests, Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davey boycotting the state banquet tonight. He says to send a message to the US president over the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
I changed my mind over the summer. It was a difficult decision. I wrestled with it because of my respect for the King. But when I saw what was happening in Gaza, with children seeing their skeletons because they're being starved, with the lifeless bodies of children killed while they were queuing for water, and the emaciated hostages that Hamas outrageously is keeping captive, I thought we had to do something. And I talked to my wife about it. I actually prayed, and I thought, this is one thing, it's a small thing that I can do. I'm not saying the Prime Minister shouldn't go to the state banquet. What I am saying is I hope he, by listening to people like me and many others, raises these issues in the firmest, strongest way possible. I don't think I'll be missed at the state banquet, but I hope by taking this action, people will debate the reality that President Trump should act. We should, as a British people, as a British government, tell him to stop it.
Well, alongside me now is the Daily Mail's Robert Hartman, author of Charles III. Robert, good of you to come down to Windsor to speak to us. It's been a really busy day so far. We're only about halfway through. Your view on what we've seen unfolding here today, this unprecedented second state visit?
There is a lot. I mean, the word unprecedented has been used a lot, but I mean, we've seen a lot of elements to this state visit today we just haven't seen with other state visits. I mean, this extraordinary triple-sized guard of honour up at the castle behind us, the president going on this extended carriage procession through the park. So these are all little details, but they all go to a sort of central message, which is that Britain is taking this extremely seriously, and wants Donald Trump to go away thinking he is the most special person on earth.
Yeah.
And right now, I think he probably feels that.
I mean, certainly, rolling out the red carpet doesn't even cover what we've seen, put on for Donald Trump today. And in terms of the level of detail that would have gone in, I mean, we talk about it weeks in the plan. It's been months in the planning, really.
Yeah, I mean, these things are planned to the nth degree. I mean, they're always great events, whoever the world leader is. I mean, just a few months ago, we were here for the Macrons in baking hot sunshine. It's a bit colder and wetter today. But what we do have are these little extra details, and heads of state, they're very good at spotting kind of protocol and etiquette and the little details. So the fact that in a few minutes we've got a military parade going on up the hill, a beating retreat, that doesn't normally happen on a state visit. And I think there's a rather poignant moment happening as we speak, which is the President paying his respects at the tomb of Elizabeth II, because, I mean, they did, they genuinely got on. And Donald Trump was the last state visitor of the late Queen's reign in 2019. So I think that for him will be quite a poignant personal moment.
We're seeing here images taken inside Windsor Castle of the President seeing works and artefacts from the royal archives, the King and Queen, finding something very amusing there. Donald Trump, as ever, animated. Who knows what's just been said before that picture was snapped. But in terms of the interaction between the King and Donald Trump, our royal correspondent Brianna Mills was reacting on the level of interaction. There's a constant conversation happening between the two men as they navigate their way around with this pomp and ceremony.
Yeah, well, they are of a fairly similar age, both born in the late 40s. And the King does have a great sense of humour. And he's known now at least 10 US presidents himself. So there's a real depth to his knowledge of the sort of bilateral relationship. And he would have taken a very close interest in the exhibition that they're looking at there. What they do at these state visits, they go into the Royal Archives and the Royal Library. And I mean, they do have the most extraordinary selection of treasures. And they've got out all sorts of things connecting Britain and America. And this particular exhibition has an awful lot of papers and documents relating to, essentially, America turfing out George III 250 years ago.
I think President Trump actually requested to see some documents and artifacts relating to that.
That's right. And they've been quite happy to bring those out. So I think when we see him sort of going, yes, I think he's probably just seen a letter where General Cornwallis has surrendered at the Battle of Yorktown or whatever it is. There's a lot in there that basically is sort of celebrating the birth of the United States, because it was essentially the American colonies kicking out the King's great ×5 grandfather that created the USA in the first place. So there's a lot of history being digested as we speak.
Yeah, a lot of history, a lot of symbolism, and we are watching these spectacular scenes unfold. I mean, no one does it better than the UK, right, in terms of pomp and ceremony. Later on this evening is the state banquet. Of course, it's part of the protocol that the King and the visiting world leader make speeches. What will you be looking out for in those speeches? Because, of course, Donald Trump is a controversial figure. The King can't say too much. There are so many topics off limits, but the King, as we saw in Canada, has a certain way of alluding to things. What do you think we'll get from this evening's speeches?
I think there'll be a lot of warmth. I think there'll be a lot of wit. The King does like to slide a few jokes into these speeches. In the past, they could be quite dry. There'll be all sorts of serious political messages, because his speech is one of those speeches that he delivers what they call on advice. So it will have been checked with the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary. So he's got to get all sorts of important political messages across, although he himself must remain above politics. But at the same time, there's a lot you can do at a human level, just sort of celebrating, 250 years of friendship. And I would expect the same from Donald Trump. I would imagine the King will allude to Donald Trump's own kind of Scottish credentials. His mother was Scottish. I think it makes a sort of pleasant change to have a sort of roaring Anglophile U.S. president. Many U.S. presidents, over the years have some of them have families who've had issues with Britain in the past. But I mean, Trump is a very proud grandson of Scotland, and I'm sure he'll want to talk about that in his speech.
It's all a very nice spectacle, lots of warm words and gestures and greetings, but there is a purpose to all of this, and essentially, let's be blunt, it's greasing the wheels, isn't it?
Yeah. God, it's transactional.
Yes, exactly. Ahead of some difficult conversations tomorrow, some really important ones, particularly from the UK's point of view. I suppose the big question is, will it work?
Well, that's always a gamble. I mean, you look back at the history of state visits, and there is always an agenda. It's not all just about having a lovely time. I mean, there's always a subtext, which is usually, as you say, oiling the wheels. It's usually about clinching some sort of a deal, opening up some sort of a new beginning. And you look back at some of the state visits over the years. I mean, golly, when I was writing a book on this some years ago, you look at the visit of President Ceausescu of Romania in 1978. I mean, an appalling dictator, invited simply because Britain wanted to get an aviation contract out of it, which actually never really materialised. So that was a state visit that didn't work. But this is a totally different one. This is our oldest, biggest ally. There's a lot riding on it in terms of business contacts, defence contacts. I mean, the big military parade that's about to unfold here, that's going to feature in it sort of fighters that both the US and the British Air Force, the Royal Air Force, are going to be using in the future. So, there is definitely, at the end of this, as well as a sort of warm glow, people want to see contracts with signatures on them.
Yeah. Robert, thank you so much for coming to speak to us here on Sky News. It's the Daily Mail's Robert Hartman, author of Charles III. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Several Silicon Valley business leaders also taking part in this president visit. The tech bros, as they've been coined, including NVIDIA's chief executive, our business and economics correspondent Gurpreet Narwan, has been catching up with him.
I was speaking earlier to Jensen Huang, the chief executive of NVIDIA, the US AI chipmaker, and now the world's largest company. It has just announced billions of pounds of investment to help develop data centres here in the UK. That's the critical infrastructure that will power the AI boom in Britain. It will allow UK AI companies to flourish. Mr. Huang said that this would help turbocharge economic growth, create jobs and opportunities, and said it would give Britain greater control or sovereignty over AI in this country and data generated here. He's obviously very excited about all of this, but he was a little perplexed about the British attitude. He said that we were all a bit self-deprecating and humble about this, when this is the land of Alan Turing, that we have some of the greatest AI minds who have trained in our universities, that we invented this stuff. So he said now was the time for Britain to seize the moment.
Sovereign AI starts with having your sovereign data and the expertise to create large language models. Don't forget, this is the home of the origins of artificial intelligence, and some of the brightest minds in artificial intelligence are here. And so the expertise of creating artificial intelligence and creating and training large language models is deep here. That's not what's missing. Surely you have lots of your own data, the data of your people, of your companies, of your society. That data is created here. It belongs to you. You should use it to train your own large language models.
Well, stay with us here on Sky News for continuous coverage of Donald Trump's state visit here to the UK. We'll have much more for you. We are expecting to see the President and the King and Queen shortly. They will be on the east lawn of Windsor Castle to view a beating retreat ceremony. More pomp and pageantry on the way. Keep it Sky News. welcome back to Windsor here on Sky News. Donald Trump spending the first day of his second state visit to the UK behind those walls. We have the latest pictures from inside the castle for you. Donald Trump being shown the royal collection inside the green drawing room of Windsor Castle. Donald Trump there taking a look at some of the artefacts, some of which he requested to be pulled from the archives to take a look at. A lot of them relating to American independence. The King walking through the artefacts with them as they took a look alongside the Queen and the First Lady. And let's bring you the moment that the US President arrived here at Windsor Castle earlier on today.
And the Commander of the Guard of Honour will slope arms. And he will go and invite the President of the United States to inspect the Guard of Honour.
Shoulder! Arms!
He will say, Mr. President, the Guard of Honour of the Grenadier Guards, Coldstream Guards and Scots Guards is present and ready for your inspection.
Mr. President, the Guard of Honour of the Grenadier Guards, the Coldstream Guards and the Scots Guards are present and awaiting your inspection.
And with a salute, the Commander will now take position and lead the President to inspect the Guard of Honour. It's a chance for the President to look straight into the eyes of the soldiers of the three regiments who represent today all the armed forces and who also represent one of the principal allied nations to the United States. Regiments that for generations have served side by side with the United States Armed Forces on both battles and peacekeeping operations. And the King following. Meanwhile, the Commander encouraging the President to now pay his respects to these soldiers. And the King encouraging him to proceed along the line past the state standards that the King gives his respects to. And the music chosen very suitably, the great Trumpet Voluntary by Clark, which in its way enhances this event. And the rear rank Chance for, again, the President to look at the Coldstream Guards, who always formed the left of the line, or the right as he was looking at it, and then the Scots Guards in the middle, and then finally the Grenadiers towards our camera. And you can tell the different regiments by their plumes and by the buttons. And closest to us, the Grenadiers have buttons equally spaced and a grenade at the collar and a white plume on the left-hand side. The Scots Guards buttons in threes in the middle, so no plume on either side. And the Coldstream Guards have their plume on the right-hand side, and it's red, and their buttons are in twos. The commander takes leave of the President with a salute by the sword. And the President expressing his gratitude. The King pointing out others who have been playing their part, and then returning to the dais where the Queen and the First Lady are waiting. The King and the President will now witness the march past of the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery with the guns that they use to fire the gun salute, followed by a rank past of the 4 divisions of the Sovereign's escort that brought the carriage procession here, and finally a march past of this 3-regiment strong Guard of Honour. And the music for this will be the Royal Artillery's Slow March. And a present arms from the Guard of Honour to the Sovereign standards and to the guns that will march past now in front of the King and the President. Guns that were used in battles like the First World War, 13-pounders that fired the gun salute today, and not only fired salutes for major occasions like this, but also have from time to time carried the coffins of members of the royal family at their funerals. And we must always remember that for the President, he's not just looking at this parade from there. He sees in the background the massive round tower of Windsor Castle set on its mound, and from which is fluttering the State Royal Standard, 36 feet long, blowing in today's rather rigorous wind here. The sound of the guns and their limbers and the caparissoning of the horses is a memory that will stick with the President, I think, in this very confined and extraordinarily beautiful quadrangle. The music now changes to the Lifeguards' Slow March. As the rank past begins of the Household Cavalry, the 4 divisions, and the trumpeter there on his charger, just holding it all together. The Lifeguards with their red tunics and white plumes. And then the Blues and Royals sleigh march will be played as the Blues and Royals.
Well, such is the nature of live television. I just think you've caught a glimpse of the Beast leaving Windsor Castle. We understand that the Beast is taking Donald Trump from one point in Windsor Castle to another. We've just had this from the White House. POTUS and FLOTUS, as they are known, the President and the First Lady, have laid a wreath on the tomb of the late Queen Elizabeth II. This was not something that was captured on camera. It was done very much in private during their tour of St George's Chapel. When the Americans are on the move with their cars, it's quite noisy, isn't it? We understood that the President and First Lady took their seats in the front row of the chapel, where they listened to the choir. They were sitting next to the Dean of Windsor, the President and First Lady speaking to the children of that choir and taking photos with them following their performance. The President and First Lady now touring the chapel, but the Beast, as you saw leaving Windsor Castle, had taken Donald Trump from lunch to St George's Chapel, which is just behind those gates there. You can just see a peek of it, a sneak peek of it through the doorway now. Well, let's speak to Dr. Leslie Benjamin, President and CEO of the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. Good of you to join us here on Sky News this afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. What do you feel the significance of this state visit is?
Well, I think it's so much about trying to cultivate an image of a relationship that's strong. It's certainly about cultivating the United States president, not an easy relationship to manage, as Prime Minister Starmer knows, as the world knows. It's really trying to sort of, smooth out the edges as much as possible so that the UK can try to have some influence on the things that actually really matter materially to its future, those trade and technology deals, but questions of tariffs, the geopolitical issues, whether it's Ukraine, Russia, the Middle East, China, so many really vital issues. But this visit is clearly just about showing the tremendous respect for the president, a difficult thing to do, and so many of those in Britain and across Europe are not respectful and don't approve of President Trump and his policies. But nonetheless, I think the Prime Minister has made a very clear decision that this is the kind of ceremony that matters deeply to President Trump. He loves Britain. He loves the royal family. He has great respect for pretty much all of it. And, while it's not getting all the headlines here in the United States, it certainly is something that President Trump's base of voters will be watching. They love the United Kingdom. Very few people don't love what they're seeing right now when it comes to the pomp and the symbolism and just the beauty of the pictures, the magnificence. But, there's this sort of underlying feeling of all is not well. It's the second state visit ever for a U.S. president, and not a U.S. president that's popular or really going to bat for the United Kingdom or for Europe. So I think that everyone knows what underlines this visit, which is deep uncertainty and maybe the beginning of a real shift in the relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom. It might be the beginning of the end, the beginning of a change, not really the recognition of the significance of the past.
I want to pick up on something you just said there about how this visit is viewed or not being viewed in the United States, in terms of it's not capturing the attention that it is here in the UK and perhaps in other parts of the world. We know that Donald Trump loves the King. He likes the Prime Minister. He loves the UK and all that comes with it, its history and tradition. But in terms of America itself and its relationship with the UK and its interest in the UK, what it sees as its relationship or its influence, how is that seen right now?
I mean, to be very honest, it's not top of mind. Americans do love the United Kingdom. They love to spend time in the United Kingdom. They deeply value studying in the United Kingdom. University exchanges, business and investment are clearly very important. There is a hope that the UK will really be able to deliver on these technological agreements that are being announced, that the infrastructure will be there, that the investments will really enable those. So there's a big bet, but at the end of the day, here in the United States, people are focused very much domestically on what will happen with interest rates. They're very concerned about recent political violence. They're focused on the economy, and when they look beyond America's borders, they're looking very much at China, at Russia and Ukraine. Obviously, people are deeply concerned about what is happening right now in Gaza. So I think that the policies that are headline are, still headline, and they're not really about the United Kingdom. The question for the United Kingdom is whether Prime Minister Starmer in particular, but the UK as a whole, can be relevant to the United States as it tackles those broader questions. For the UK, the question is entirely different. It's whether it can manage its relationship with the United States while it's trying to build the resilience and the partnerships with Europe and elsewhere to make it more independent from the United States. Those are really two very different things that in some ways are at odds with each other. But, the dependence of the United Kingdom on the United States is, as we all know, just simply not mirrored in the U.S. Need for the United Kingdom on any of these measures.
So in that case, what does America get out of this state visit, bar Donald Trump indulging in his love for the UK? I mean, it's clear what the UK want and are trying to get. We've heard about these tech deals. We talk about trade. There's a lot of transactional things that will be going on over the next couple of days. But in terms of the United States walking away with something from the state visit, what is there?
President Trump cares a huge amount about those leading technology companies. He would like for them and therefore Americans to have a foothold in Europe. He does see the United Kingdom as a country that's more flexible, more nimble, less focused on regulations, perhaps more willing to bend to the president's will when it comes to governance in the realm of artificial intelligence. And hence those deals that are being announced to invest in the infrastructure that's needed for artificial intelligence, for data centers. There is a huge win for in this space to have that access to Europe. The EU is a much harder market to navigate, and so it's a bet. It's not clear that it will be delivered. But if Donald Trump can get that for America's leading tech companies from the UK, if it can be a win-win deal for the UK, then that is tremendous. I think also that President Trump would certainly like to see a Europe and NATO allies that are doing more, and the UK is clearly an important security partner. We know that pretty much every American president has wanted to shift its focus towards China, the Indo-Pacific. The UK is important to that, but it's even more important to doing more when it comes to Russia's aggression, its war in Ukraine. And so, the UK has a tremendous potential and has been a very important partner, but it's almost so that President Trump can move away from any real material commitment to the United Kingdom and to Europe as a whole. And unfortunately, it's a bit of a negative agenda rather than a positive one, with the exception, the very important exception of this question of technology and access.
Dr. Vinjamuri, really good to get your thoughts during this state visit. Dr. Leslie Vinjamuri, their director of the US and the Americas programme at Chatham House. Our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, is here and was listening to that. It's all very transactional, isn't it? All this pomp and ceremony. Essentially, tomorrow it's going to come down to, what have you got that we want and vice versa.
Well, it always is with Donald Trump, and we say this a lot with him, don't we? But he is somebody who doesn't believe that you can have a win-win outcome from any deal. Someone has to be a winner, someone has to be a loser. It's something he kind of learned in the real estate business in New Jersey and New York and Queens, and it's something that he fundamentally believes in. So for him, for instance, multilateral organisations were everyone is a winner, like NATO or the UN or the EU or whatever, he's always suspicious about, because he always thinks that someone's got to get a bad deal out of this, and it's generally America in his mind. So he thinks NATO is a rip-off, and that's why he's put so much pressure on Europeans to spend more on defence, for instance. So, you know, in a sense, that is the jeopardy for the British government, because what they're saying to him is that we're going to give you a great state visit here, unlike anything we've ever given any other elected leader, but we want something in return. And he's not somebody who normally believes in you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. But we'll have to see. And I think, you know, what we're hearing there from Chatham House, you know, there's a lot of excitement about the AI deals, about the tech deals. There's less excitement about what had been another great hope, which this could lead to better deals in terms of tariffs for British industry, particularly steel. And that has kind of been scotched, and expectations have been managed ahead of this visit, and that will disappoint, obviously, the steel industry. So in terms of what happens next with this, I think we'll hear more tomorrow. But as we've been saying all day, he's not somebody whose word can be held to. He's not somebody who really always honours his word. So whatever he says tomorrow, it'll be in the doing that he'll be judged. And I think, you know, there is concern about whether he'll just walk away from this, bank all the pomp and ceremony, bank all the great pictures, which will undoubtedly do him good back home, but not give an awful lot in return.
Yeah, it's interesting, Chatham House, they're saying that President Trump is pulling away from Europe. Where does that leave you, the UK, in all of that? What will this special relationship look like in the longer term? Just scenes here we're bringing you on Sky News from the East Lawn of Windsor Castle. The next part of the pomp and ceremony of today is due to get underway shortly. US and British military families invited onto the East Lawn to view a beating retreat ceremony. The President, the First Lady joining the King and Queen and the Prime Minister and Lady Starmer for this. It's due to get underway shortly. We'll keep across that live here on Sky News. In the meantime, we've been hearing from the White House details about what's been going on inside Windsor Castle, away from the cameras. We know that the President and the First Lady privately paid their respects in St George's Chapel at the tomb of the late Queen Elizabeth II, laying a wreath. We understand that President Trump was greeted by two church officials in red robes. He and the First Lady took their seats, the choir also in red robes, singing a hymn with the words Gloria in Excelsis, accompanied by the chapel organ. The White House goes on to say afterwards, POTUS and FLOTUS went to speak to the girls and boys of that choir. President Trump spending several minutes talking to them, and there was some laughter. At the end, they all posed for a picture, and Trump said, "See those people over there? That's the media." That coming from the White House. We can bring you a picture now of them inside. So that is the President there. I believe that's the Dean of Windsor, just showing them around the chapel. They had a tour before visiting the tomb. The President and First Lady given that short tour. Officials from the chapel pointing out various details. The President stopping to speak to them for some moments. Not possible to hear what he was saying, though, but that's the President and First Lady taking a tour of St George's Chapel, a poignant and private moment captured there by cameras. Those official photographs coming out within the last few minutes. Our royal commentator Alistair Bruce is standing by as we await the beating retreat ceremony. But Alistair, talk us through the significance of St George's Chapel. It's just a few yards from where I'm standing now, behind the castle wall.
We're seeing a photograph of the President and First Lady with the Right Reverend Christopher Coxworth, who is the Dean of Windsor, and with Charlotte Manley, who is the clerk to the canons and to the chapter. And clearly the Dean is pointing out elements of the chapel. Not least, he will have taken the President and First Lady to the George VI Chantry Chapel, where Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, lie at rest with George VI and Queen Elizabeth. So it's a chapel that celebrates, in a sense, the Order of the Garter and has as much history as you can imagine. And we're seeing now the arrival of the musicians who will take part in the beating retreat ceremony on the East Lawn. And first of all, you've got the band of His Majesty's Royal Marines, Portsmouth, and also you have the United States Old Guard Fife and Drum Corps. And I think there'll be a wonderful combination of music from both sides of the Atlantic out here on the East Lawn, which is normally a golf course, and it's set, as you can see, on an escarpment overlooking the River Thames, which is behind those trees. And this was a military encampment established by the Romans. And so Windsor sits in a place of military significance that goes back to the time of the Roman conquest. You can see there the setup of the position for the King, the Queen and the President and First Lady, who will witness this along with an invited group of guests, mostly from the armed forces of the United Kingdom and from the United States. But it's always a wonderful location, although the wind, I think, is quite strong today. Still, no rain yet. Once they're all in position, the King and the President will walk from the castle out to take their position, and the Queen and the First Lady will come out by car. The Prime Minister will be here with Mrs. Starmer, and also those members of the President's suite who came with the President in the procession of carriages this morning. So the music we will hear will be led by the Director of Music of the Royal Marines, who is Lieutenant Colonel Hugh Williams. He's their principal Director of Music. And in the armed forces of the United Kingdom, the Royal Marines are always known for the highest standards of their music. Let's listen to the drummers.
Let's bring you the latest pictures from inside Windsor Castle. This happening around an hour or so ago. President Trump and the King inside Windsor Castle to view artefacts from the royal collection. We saw some still photographs before of the President looking rather animated looking at some of these pieces. Perhaps we'll be able to get a clearer idea as to what he was looking at that got him so animated. The King and Queen looking quite jolly, and a little bit of laughter along the way as well. Alistair, what were they looking at? What pieces have been chosen from the collection?
Well, we saw the Director of the Royal Collection, Tim Knox, receiving the President then as he came in with the King to the Green Drawing Room in Windsor Castle, and a number of items have been brought out. I think one of the most fascinating is a message from President Lincoln to Queen Victoria to mark the death of Prince Albert, her husband, in 1861. There are also significant communications that took place during the Battle of American independence from Great Britain. And of course, in these very rooms, George III would have lived and would have been agonizing about the challenges faced by the move for independence by the colonies of America. And of course, the whole history of the two nations have been encompassed by the King's family. And it's fun for the King to show these objects to the President. And the President, I think, would be very interested to see these objects. Also, there are letters from George VI to the King's mother.
you'll have to all come back. This is the live full cameras. Thank you. Is this the minor shot?
Yes. Leave your bag, just take your camera.
Introducing the only
No, I can't quite see it. There's Keir Starmer and Mrs. Starmer have arrived.
Yes, it is. It's Lady Starmer and Keir Starmer there, just taking their seats on the front row. On the front row, the dignitaries of the politicians coming in.
Members of the royal family always last to arrive. Then the King and Princess of Wales, and then the King and Queen, along with the president position, along with the President.
Close up now, as you can see, that is Keir Starmer. As you can see, that is Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Lady Starmer by his side, and we heard, did we not, Rafe Hadelmanku during the build-up to this state visit, that Lady Starmer would be deployed as Keir Starmer's secret weapon, because Donald Trump was very taken by Lady Starmer when they met last time.
Yes, Donald Trump has been singing Mrs. Starmer, or Lady Starmer's praises for a long time, and so she is, you know, another secret weapon being unveiled in this unique state visit. We have here now all of the mass bands are all lined up waiting for the opening fanfare by the state trumpeters of the Household Cavalry. That's going to kick off affairs. Here we can also see the Defence Minister sitting alongside Lady Starmer.
And we're building up to that flypast. There's always a tinge of sadness. They're standing up now. Always a tinge of sadness. What's happening here, Rafe? This is the main man.
So now we have the arrival of the landau. This will be with Her Majesty the Queen in it. Judging by the standard flying from the roof of the car, I assume it's going to be Her Majesty the Queen, since those are her arms.
And while we wait for them to come out, Rafe Hadelmanku, always a tinge of sadness here that a flypast has been cancelled. We were very, very much looking forward to the military jets coming, but we will still get the Red Arrows.
Yes, everyone's favourite flying display team, the Red Arrows, will be here in force. They've been to America several times. I'm sure the President is familiar with them, and they will be flying, alas, without the F-35s, which was going to be an amazing sight to see for the first time, the American and British Armed Forces flying together.
Cameron Walker, let's head back into you now. Sir Keir Starmer ready and waiting, Lady Starmer by his side, and the Royals about to join them, Cameron Walker.
Yes, absolutely. This is the first time we've seen Sir Keir Starmer today at Windsor Castle, Martin. He's also going to be, of course, at the state banquet tonight, but this is really the first part that he has been involved with in the ceremonial welcome of the President of the United States. Of course, it is on the advice of his government that the King invites President Trump for this historic second, unprecedented second state visit to the United Kingdom. The King's car, as you said, has just arrived, so any moment now we are expecting him to emerge and step foot onto the dais ahead of President Trump making the appearance. But beating retreat is basically 200 military musicians performing a rendition of Beating Retreat on the east lawn of Windsor Castle. We've got UK and we've got US military families and personnel here to witness this event as well. Again, it's that joint collaboration, isn't it, Martin, between the United Kingdom and the United States. This is all part of the King wielding his soft power, and it really is a military spectacle, a ceremony originating in the early years of organised warfare and symbolises the end of the day when camp gates were closed and ceremonial flags were lowered. And the ceremony takes place actually every year on Horse Guards Parade in June, when the salute is usually taken by a member of the royal family, which just shows the uniqueness, perhaps, of this moment, that President Trump is being given this honour of beating the retreat on the first day of his state visit. And we've got the corps drum major of the Royal Marines is present. We've got all the military bands and musicians as well. We've got the band of His Majesty's Royal Marines Portsmouth, the band of the Scots Guards, the Central and College bands of the Royal Air Force as well. So it's a tri-service military spectacle that is going to be taking place. And here is His Majesty the King and President Trump emerging onto the east lawn of Windsor Castle, which is in the upper ward of the castle. It's usually a very private part, actually, of the royal residence. The pub allowed to go into this part of the castle. I think the only time I've been there was for the King's coronation concert back in May 2023, and Her Majesty the Queen and the First Lady are also there, and a royal fanfare signalling the arrival of King Charles III. The King, Queen, President Trump and the First Lady Melania Trump making their way to the dais on the east lawn of Windsor Castle, walking down a red carpet and up the steps. The Prime Minister just to the right-hand side of the screen, and Lady Starmer invited to attend this part of these celebrations. Of course, tomorrow it's going to be the Prime Minister and President Trump locked in several intense political meetings, but today is about the pomp, it's about the pageantry, it's about the soft power that the King wields. And also quite special that US have been invited to watch this beating retreat alongside UK families, which perhaps signals the importance military relationships and the country relationships between Britain and the United States. And of course the F-35 flypast, which was going to happen after beating retreat, has been cancelled, but that originally was due to, of course, show this joint strength of two NATO forces, the United Kingdom and the United States. And here we are, beating retreat is off. 200 military musicians performing a rendition of beating retreats. Under the direction of Lieutenant Colonel Hugh Williams, the Principal Director of Music of the Royal Marines, and led by Warrant Officer Bugler
Thank you.